Hi, my name's Mike, aka Pixel Blip on the internet. Welcome to VR Blip, a new VR channel where I'll be talking to artists around the world, looking at their work, just things I've come across randomly on the internet. A lot of it's going to be in VR chat because I think some of the best worlds are being done there, but I will be talking to other artists and just expose you to things that I've seen that have really inspired me. Today I'm going to be talking to an artist called Durk. I found him on VR chat. His worlds are spectacular. They're surreal. They're full of colour. He plays around with all sorts of styles like Aztech and South American, and clearly a lot of care and time's gone into building these worlds, so I thought I must talk to him. You can find his worlds if you do a search for Durk in VR chat. He's got about 5 or 6 worlds there. You can also look below in the description, and I will post links to his work. And thanks very much, Durk, for speaking to me. I hope I'm going to be able to interview lots more artists on this channel and just show everybody what incredible stuff is going on. Okay, right, let's go over to Durk now.
So, would you, well, just the usual thing, but would you like to tell us a bit about yourself? I'm really interested in how got into VR. What's your journey with the computer graphics?
Yeah, so like going all the way back, I went to art school, just painting and drawing. That's kind of the basis. And I'm so old that back then you couldn't really do even that much with computers. I'm 45 now. I think Photoshop had like one layer or something. Anyway, fast forward to a couple of years after art school, doing shitty jobs, not being able to make any money, obviously, as an artist. I started looking at the computer. I was playing around with it a little bit, and I was already seeing like, if I'm going to figure out a way to make a living doing some type of art, then it's probably going to be the computer. So in evening hours, I was kind of playing around with software. A lot of this software doesn't even exist now anymore. It was like things like Bryce, early
Oh,
versions of modeling software, and just messing around with that. I started messing around with 3ds Max back in the day. I was making some things for Second Life, which also had the SDK, so you could figure out how to make some 3D models for that. So very rudimentary, simple stuff, but I was already kind of hooked on that idea of making these kind of metaverse worlds that other people could explore. I thought that was really interesting. Learning 3ds Max for like a year or so, I saw a job listed for architectural visualizer. So I made this portfolio, which wasn't really good, but I did not have a lot of competition back in the day because for so early days, there were no people that had like studied this at that point. So I applied for the job and I told them like, honestly, I'm not very good, but I learn fast and and I worked there for 3 years, and that was really great. I learned so much, just really applying, learned a lot about architecture, about lighting, about creating stills. We also created some animation, stuff like that. That was 3 years. Then the housing crisis came, and then all those building projects, they got put on hold. So I got laid off because of that. And a lot of people in that sector at that time in the Netherlands, I think throughout the world, got laid off because people just stopped building at that point. I got another job for another year, also doing architectural visualization and some other visualization as well. Then I really was mainly because I was doing the animation stuff, and it was taking with V-Ray at the time, and it was taking so much time, getting rendering frames for like 5 minutes per frame, and these like turning these things on, going home, and then the next morning you hope you didn't forget to put the texture on the chair or anything, messing it up. And I got really interested in Unreal Engine. I saw people making some really nice stuff with game engines back in the day. and I really felt like this real-time rendering stuff is much more interesting to me. So then also kind of in evening hours in my spare time, I started digging into Unreal Engine. I started digging into Unity. Got fairly proficient in building worlds with Unity, which at least back then was a little easier to get into and a little easier to get on projects, working with projects with other people, because there was a bigger community of developers for Unity. I had a local company where some guys that I worked with, where I started doing things with Unity. We made some installations, some art installations. We did a bunch of stuff. We did some VR stuff. Also, one of the things we did, which was very cool, there was like this big hotel that had an elevator, and they put up a big vertical screen, and we created like a fake window, so you would see the outside with
Oh,
all
wow.
like the highlights of that city, but also
Right.
all bundled together. And when the lift would go up, you would actually see the camera change, and it would actually, be fairly realistic. You would because the lift already gives you like the G-force, you get that sense that you're actually ascending and descending. We made this other really cool VR thing, very small. You wouldn't know about it. It wasn't like published. It was for like an educational system where you could put planets in orbit, and if you put them too far out of orbit, they would spin away out in the universe. And if they're too close to the sun, they would, destruct themselves. Kind of learning kids about the heavenly bodies and planets and stuff like that. I worked on some animation movies, doing some character design. So back then, really saying yes to everything, and that really got me set on really building with Unity. I started building my own world, which was Maranga, which is now like, I think I started it maybe even like 7 years ago, where because I started also modeling in VR using Gravity Sketch, I had all these cool models, and I was like, what should I do with them? And I decided I'll just build one big world, and kind of like a pleasure garden, open museum world. I'll put these models in there, no real plan. And then for years and years, I kept adding to it and really kind of learning more about optimizing really big scenes. One day that world got noticed through Twitter, also by the Raindance Immersive Festival. Excuse me. So there, I submitted it for. They had these categories called like Best Immersive World and Best Immersive Art Experience. Submitted Maranga for that. I didn't win anything, but I got like 2 honorable mentions, and some people really enjoyed it. I gave some tours in Maranga, and it was only I think I don't know, a couple of months ago that I decided to port Maranga over to VR Chat, because it's like that'll have a longer life, and I'm not really a developer or a coder, so I don't. I really love the fact that I can build a world and put it on a platform and not deal with updates and not deal with a lot of the technical stuff. Just do the visual stuff. And that's what I've kind of kept doing in my spare times, building these big open worlds. I'm building a new one as we speak, which I'm submitting for the next Raindance Immersive, because they've got a really nice, kind of VR chat crowd going on. And it's really really enjoyable for me to do. The thing that I'm paying the bills with at the moment is the digital art side more. So like 3 years ago, the NFT craze came. I got involved. I started up basically 2 projects with 2 people that were really successful. So that was really good. Obviously, that a big part of the NFT market deflated. But one of the people I'm still working with, it's an artist in the US. It's a former Major League Baseball player called Micah Johnson. I don't know if you've seen stuff of him on my timeline, but we basically created this character called Aku, meant to kind of inspire kids. Long story short, we're creating a bunch of art and stuff with that. We just created a small 3D collectible that we're selling, and really trying to make, I'm kind of his right hand man, and we're trying to really create kind of break into the art world with that character, and it's going quite well actually. So in terms of what I do now on a daily basis for a living, it's really I'm very blessed to only be working on like super fun stuff, and
Yeah.
I don't have to say yes to everything. I can be very selective in the things I do in the other hours. Long story, but that's in
It's
short, that's kind of the history.
it's interesting you're making your money out of art, like and NFTs and things. That's really exciting, because we had a bit of a crash with it, and you thought, what's gonna happen with it, or you know, oh, you there? Oh, hello? Oh, uh, let's have a look. Oh, what the hell? Hello, you back again?
Yep, I'm
Sorry about
back.
that. I don't know what happened there.
It
Sorry, I've
happens,
never had my internet cut out, but there we are. It's always the first time when you're doing these things.
of course, of course.
So yeah,
So
I was
you
saying,
you were saying you started talking about we had a crash.
yeah, it's quite good, quite, yeah, with the NFT thing for a while. I don't know when there was a Bitcoin slump and you wondered what was going to happen, but you see the NFT market as, I mean, you're earning a living from it now. So, do you
Yeah,
think it,
and making your money of art, that was always the dream. So I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. Now, obviously, in the NFT market, a lot of when we started, and I kind of started in still kind of early days. I think it was 2020, 2019. I was finding out about it, and there was a bunch of digital artists that a lot of them I already knew, and I already saw them doing great work, but they really only had a big following on social media, and it was for a lot of these people really hard to make a living of just the art. They would do work on animations, they would work on a bunch of projects, but just to sell their art autonomously was really hard for digital artists back then. So when the NFT started, it was really kind of creating that lane for all these people that, to my feeling, really deserved it. That was really great. Then obviously a lot of the gambling and the speculation that came in, and that yeah, a big part of the NFT at that point became less about art and more about speculating and making money. And it's all fine. But
do you see a healthy future for it? Like the way
I
things are
see.
going?
Well, I predicted back then that this was going to happen because obviously the people saw this market exist, and then people flock to it because other people are flocking to it. Those are also the first people to leave when it goes down. So that's good actually that they leave. But that I already said, like those when we started the single, like the just artists themselves following, that they would prevail, and that's what's kind of happening
Mm,
because people still love a person that makes art. People still want to relate to somebody that makes art and want to see what they're up to, see how they're progressing, see their newest thing. That's much more interesting to people than more like an anonymous organization where it's not, you don't really know the people behind it. You just kind of know the output. So the corporate side is less interesting to people. And I think people following artists, same with musicians, that's evergreen. That's always going to be a thing. And if you now look at the artists, I mean, like I don't know if you know these artists, but like a Brian Brinkman or a Sam Spratt, and I think also Michael Johnson, the guy I'm working with, and a bunch of others. Um, they're still going forward, and there's still conversations with galleries and museums, and they're laying the connection between that digital art world and the more established art world. Um, and I think a big part of the established art world was a bit scared off when that second part happened, as I said, when all the speculation and money came in, and a lot of people were a bit deterred from it, understandably so. But there's still, those artists will remain because they believe in what they do, and their fans and people that like their art believe in what they do. And then it doesn't matter if it's NFTs or anything, it's just another platform, just another conduit. The essence is not the NFT, the essence is the art. um, so yeah, I think we've had like this big forest fire, and in a way that's a good thing, you know. Then a lot of new stuff can grow and blossom after that. So it's less in the mainstream now. It's less, there's less eyes on it. Really healthy, and I'm really glad that the bubble deflated and we're
Mm.
back to the place where it's really about people are actually long term building stuff, and it's not about just blowing up hype, short term gains and stuff like that. But it was
Yeah.
really interesting to be part of it, and you know, we had some crazy things happen in the, during that kind of roller coaster ride. So that was really interesting.
Yeah. And also how AI will affect that side of it, you know. Um, oh, what is going on with my internet? Ah, am I gonna just see? Are you there? No, I don't know why it's just cutting out. Bloody London internet. Hello? Mm. Oh, this is crap. Sorry, sorry, Dirk. I don't know what's going on today. Uh, I'm just gonna
Is it
check.
still is it still usable for you? Are you gonna
Yes, it
like
is. Yeah, I can edit the
uh,
bits out. I just don't want to be talking to you in detail and then find nothing's recorded. I don't know why it's cutting out. It's normally it's quite good. All right. Well, anyway, we'll carry on. But yeah, it's interesting how AI um how that will work out with NFTs and art creation and all that kind of thing, won't it? It's mind-boggling, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
the AI thing is yeah, I have like on one hand it's exciting and all the thing you can do with it. On the other side, it's also a bit scary that we don't really understand what it is and we don't get any rules in place before it takes over like the world. And you know, when it comes to art, it's more about like making sure that, you know, we protect artists and make sure that copyright and all of that stuff is handled, because I think we are not doing a great job of that. Hopefully, the only way forward is that we're not going to go back. The only way forward with technology is that more technology is going to solve the problem. So, if we're going to have a system where like Midjourney scoops up all this data of all these artists, but then finds a way to monetize it for those artists, where if you are part of your data set, you will find some way in making money if you are used as a prompt, or probably something more intelligent than what I just described. That will be good, but that's probably some lawsuits in the future that we're gonna
Yeah, yeah,
force companies to start doing that.
yeah. Have you tried any of the 3D AI tools out there yet? Like, there's not many, but like they're starting to come on a bit, aren't they?
Yeah. I've looked at some. I've messed around with a one or two. Um, they're interesting for now. For me, there's nothing really there to really. There's nothing really usable there at the moment. But I'm sure that will come. I like For now, these are kind of really triangulated meshes. They're really I think the AI works with point cloud data and then turns that into triangles, which means that, you know, it's a bit more technical, but like the edge flow of these models is not really good. So
Mm.
they're not really great for texturing. They're not really great for or even animating them, or making them really optimized for VR stuff. But yeah, I'm also sure that it's a matter of time before you'll be able to do those kind of things. Um, the AI we now see, a lot of it is very kind of general purpose, kind of proving that the proof of concept is there, that the idea works. But if you get more fine grained and you want to plug these tools into an artist pipeline, they're always going to have to be optimized for a specific thing. Like what is this artist making it for? Is it VR? Is it animation? Is it does it have to run in your browser? These are all very different platforms and all require very different things. Is it AI, AR, augmented reality, for example? But as I said, I think it's a time before it just takes time for those things to become more granular and kind of support those use cases. But if nobody really asks for them or nobody really needs them, then there's no real incentive to make that. So I think now there's just like an explosion. Things are just being made just for the sake of it. We can, so we'll do it. And then you have to have this again, probably another forest fire where all the useless stuff kind of falls off, or the stuff that's kind of a little bit morally ambiguous because of all the training data. And then we'll have to find ways where hopefully more like artist-led companies will find ways to use them in a good way. But like I hear stories about studio executives firing all their concept artists, or not building this new studio because they're like, oh, Sora is going to make those videos for me now, or I can rely on one prompt engineer. I think they're a bit too soon with that, but we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. Because I know a lot of this new technology. Always the prototype looks great, and as soon as you need that another step and get more specific, there's like that. A lot of these things, it's like the first 80% you can get to really quickly, and then like another 50% takes very long, and then that last couple of percent can take years and years.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like a linear curve. I don't know if it applies to AI, obviously, because AI itself can maybe compensate that. But it's like with Elon Musk and the self-driving cars. He got really good to being like almost safer than a human, but the perfection in those last percent turns out to be might even be unsolvable.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, Apple abandoned their one, didn't they? So
yeah.
it can't be as easy as all that. And did you so you were doing the 3D Max stuff in the 90s? Like, was that roundabout when you were, the architecture stuff? Were you?
No, it was later. It was later. It
right.
was I think 2003. I came out of art school. I think a couple of years later, I was kind of messing around. So it must have been 2004, 2005. Oh no, even during art school, I was already. It was not 3ds Max. It was called BCAD. It was not AutoCAD. It was a version of AutoCAD called BCAD, where we would just make like big spheres and donuts with weird colors and kind of rotate them around and the typical kind of experiments you do when you first start out. So come to think of it, I think that's actually where I already started kind of messing around with 3D.
And when do you think was the first time you saw VR? Was it when Oculus started? Did you get a DK?
Yeah.
Right, a DK1 or
Yeah, I got the very first one. When that news was announced, I was already like immediately like I have to buy this. This is going to be awesome. And it was quite an experience. If you now look back at that first one, it's like it's so far removed from what we have now. But still, that first experience of putting it on, and I had already made a little scene where I knew like, I'm going to get these glasses. I'm going to be like immediately be able to plug in because Unity was already set up. And then like the first time like walking through that very, very simple scene, frame rate wasn't even that great, but it was kind of magical.
Yeah.
That I really remember that. And then quickly after that, not too long after that, I think that first commercial version, the CV1 came out. And I've used that for years and years before I upgraded to something else actually. So yeah.
So what do you use at the moment now? Like, do you?
I upgraded to a MetaQuest Pro.
Oh, right. Yeah, I had a chance to use one of those. It was interesting.
Yeah, I'm really. There's a lot of they try to innovate a lot with this, and I think there's a lot of issues. I mean, Zuckerberg is known for his motto, where it's like move fast and break things.
Yeah.
And there's two sides. It's great because he did really move the needle and really push this tech forward and kept on coming with the new versions. But this one is really, I'm really thinking of looking for like a Quest 3 or something, because it keeps on losing the trackers. You have to position it very perfectly on the thing, otherwise it won't charge. And
Yes, I found that really annoying. Yeah.
yeah, so that's one of those design decisions they made too quickly. They didn't test it
Yeah.
thoroughly, and it looks sleek and stuff like that. But so yeah, but it's, I mean, the lenses are much better, and you don't have to have those the stations for the tracking setup. And obviously you could have it wireless, but I always have it connected to the PC.
Yeah.
So that's where I do all my VR stuff.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. I think the next one's coming out. Well, did I read rumors they're going to bring another one out? So they're going to have another bash at it, I think. It'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
And
every now and I mean, I'm not always too. Every now and then I have to like be like, all right, what's the latest state of affairs?
sure.
Which one is out? Because there's so much happening. But
Yeah, yeah, I'm still using the Windows mixed reality ones.
oh
I
really?
bought them so cheaply. Yeah, I got a
Yeah.
Lenovo one for like 50
Oh
pounds or
wow,
something. Yeah, and I think
that's great.
Microsoft said they're gonna discontinue them, but they're really, for what they are, they're really good if you want to get into VR for the first time and you don't have much
Interesting.
money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I tried one of those a long time ago, I think. Yeah.
So I was going to talk to you about you, your worlds in VR chat. I was looking at them all again today, and you started out with one quite a few years ago, like a basic room. I know it's about 90 megabytes. Was that your first one with the?
Which one was that?
It was like there was a clock in there and a radio and the
Oh
sun
yeah, yeah,
coming
yeah,
in.
yeah. Oh yeah, right. Yeah. That was a really small one. Yeah, that was definitely the first one. That was a wow. It was really a test where I was like, all right, let me. I was kind of doing this kind of low poly style for Moringa, and then I was like, all right, let me do a very small space for kind of VR chat and kind of figure out how that works. Um, yeah, that was the first one.
So you were building Moranga really from the offset when you started doing this. You were
Yeah, when I
yeah.
started to use VR for my modeling, so when I started using like Gravity Sketch, that's really when Maranga started being built. But it was really, there were months when I wasn't doing anything on it, and then I would pick it up again, and then I would. Uh, so it was not like I was continuously working on it. But looking back, it was like, yeah, years and years of like collecting all these 3D models, and then doing side things like building a little VR chat world, and kind of getting the hang of that.
Yeah, it's interesting you use Gravity Sketch. I mean, is that your one of your main things, or are you in Blender a lot, or do you tend to use that you don't use Blender? That's interesting. Yeah.
No, Blender is one of those things that's always kind of been on my list to learn, but my main tool is Gravity Sketch. I really love that. It's really hard for me to go back to like a flat screen and do 3D modeling there, because I'm just so used to it, especially when you're building for VR. Just makes so much sense to build it in VR. But if I do need to do some cleanup or do some technical stuff or do like hand unwrapping UVs and stuff like that, then I'll use 3ds Max. But my brain is just kind of programmed by 3ds Max, so it's really hard for me to get into Blender. But Blender it's beautiful. It was actually started by a Dutch guy, Ton Roosendaal.
Yeah.
And to see the evolution that Blender's gone through, from in the beginning being fairly kind of obscure and not industry standards, now the whole community that's surrounding it, it's pushing all the big ones uh, out, and it really makes the case for like the open source model having like the longest um, you know breadth. How do you say, like the
Like the
most.
shelf life, or yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah.
It seems to pay off in the long run for those projects. And if you see the add-ons for Blender already early on, the sculpting tools, but now also I'm seeing the 2D effects that they have, the hand-drawn stuff, the animation stuff. It's mind-blowing. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Sometimes though
But
the tools can get in the way of the ideas, like Gravity Sketch. I've played with it a bit, but it's probably quite an immediate thing because
yeah,
you know, it's like this,
definitely.
isn't it? Yeah.
I love it that there are a lot of tools in there that I don't even use. I use like the poly modeling tool because they didn't have that in the beginning. So then I didn't really mess with it. I couldn't really use it. The geometry wasn't really a good fit to build VR stuff with it. But as soon as they were already announcing it, as soon as they added the poly modeling, I was like, this is it. Because now I can make production ready assets. And I have the focus of VR because I don't have any distractions and I just have like one big brush. And so as you said, like the tools really don't get in the way. There's not the UI is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of clutter in there. It really, you don't get lost in that. And even for Gravity Sketch, one of the cool things is that because I was talking with them early on, I did an interview with them as one of the people that were making stuff with Gravity Sketch, and then they approached me about doing one of the environments. So one of the environments, I think it's the default one where you have kind of this room. I actually made for them.
Wow. Cool.
So when I'm in modeling in Gravity Sketch, I'm actually in my own in basically the warehouse room that I made. I can made it with them, obviously, but
That's quite weird.
we were always talking about
Yeah.
doing. I tried to encourage them to do more because I really like. I don't like to have just a black or white or gradient or skybox surroundings. I
Yeah.
like to actually have some geometry there because it helps with my motion sickness. If there's actually a 3D art, it can be super simple, but it grounds me a little bit, especially when I have big models and I'm turning them around. You can get a bit queasy. So I was already building another one for them, but then they had this internal shift where they needed to focus on solving more of the technical problems. But I'll every now and then I'll shoot them an email and be like, let's make a new space because I think having the cool thing about VR is you can completely control the entire space you're working in,
Yeah.
and that can be really additive. It can be really kind of inspiring, and there's a lot of extra things they could do with it. But they've got an internal focus on a certain industry, which I totally understand. It has to do with the investors they have. It's sneakers, cars, airplanes.
Yeah.
That's industrial design kind of stuff. But I always say like Gravity Sketch can do so much more, and they love to see that as well, obviously.
Yeah. I'll have to play with it some more, I think. You know, it and so when I look at your worlds in VR chat, I mean, I was just bowled over when I first saw them. They're quite surreal to me. I use this word a lot, but there's this feeling of surrealism in them and that. But what there's a style to them. It's quite like a South American influence, or
Yeah,
how would you describe? Like, did you go for a look in
it's
it? Like, what's your because there seems to be common themes going through all these worlds, like the sort of
yeah, yeah. It's the stuff that like when I make something, it's just a moment of inspiration, like what I like at the time. That's why it's kind of a little bit of a mishmash.
mm,
But the through line is just me, basically, what I like, my style. That kind of is the glue that keeps it together. So it wasn't really planned out, but when I look back in retrospect, I can see, oh yeah, these are definitely the kind of themes that I'm inspired by, kind of Mesoamerican designs, or like Aztec kind of elements. And why that is, it's I just really like the kind of surreal, psychedelic, really colorful stuff. I was always more drawn to, so I like surreal stuff. I like science fiction, but I'm always more drawn to more the Studio Ghibli aesthetic, where it's colorful, it's beautiful, but it's also a bit spooky,
Mm.
psychedelic, a bit scary, but also, and I think you find the same in a lot of this Mesoamerican Aztec, where it is very it's almost like celebrating life and art, but it also has this dark side. I like that more than the purely dystopian sci-fi worlds. And you see a lot
Right.
of it, obviously, in VR chat. I've never had too much with that aesthetic. I like the combination of the world I'm building now, for example. Also, it has its lovely daytime green forest, but then you'll find some sculptures that are like, and some audio design that makes it kind of eerie and a little bit spooky. Um, I don't know why. I think I would just like the contrast between that, the colorfulness, but not necessarily just happy or for kids, but with that other component where it becomes a bit mushroom trip, kind of psychedelic.
It's very much like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think there
yeah.
was one I think it's in Morangi. You go into a cave and there's a big like monkey smoking something. Is it a monkey? I just seem to remember it. It was like,
Yeah, it
wow,
is kind of like
that looks cool. That,
a
yeah,
little like a shaman. I've done some
shaman.
shamans because they just have these. You can really go nuts with the garments and the colorful clothings they wear. You know.
And the caterpillars or whatever those things are, those are very strange.
Oh, that really goes to show that I'm really not much of an animator. So I wanted
Well,
to put some animation, but then I find a way to do it very stylized, keep it very simple, and so it's
yeah.
still effective.
Oh,
But
it's
I
amazing.
don't,
Mm.
I'm in that sense, I'm really kind of a generalist.
Oh, I
But I
thought they were
like to do a
really
little bit of,
strange when I saw them. They were like low poly, sort
yeah,
of. It reminded me of June or something, or I don't know. Like,
right, like sandworms, and then just really simple kind of
yeah.
UV animated UVs, just to have these colorful bands going there. So I'm always thinking like, what are my technical skills? What can I do? Well, how can I make something that actually fits within that? And I'll need to learn something, but I'll only learn the specific thing I need for that. So that's also like how I learn through Maranga and those projects. That's how I learn. I was never the guy that could sit down and be like, all right, today I'm going to learn to do, weight painting for animations, or today I'm going to learn the short keys or shortcuts for this software. So the making is, and I think a lot of creatives are like that. You only learn through giving yourself these projects and making. And then you end up with this kind of weird skill set that has a bit of everything, and then kind of
Mm.
turns into these kind of personal projects.
Yeah, I think it was the it looks like kids' toys in it sometimes, like you go into the houses and they look like sort of fairy tale houses, sort of trippy houses or something. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Um, well,
yeah.
very
I also
wacky and
one of the other influences for me also that I really love is Studio Leica. Studio Leica does the stop motion, but their aesthetic is also very. It's not the typical kid-focused aesthetic. It has some really adult. I mean, adult is not the word, but like advanced ways of doing textures and character designs, and it's really they also have this, one of their movies, for example, is Coraline. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really beautiful, but it's also really scary. It has that tension, that psychedelic nature, but still grounded in a very very beautiful world. And that stop motion aspect of actually, and this is what I really like in VR, to have materials that you kind of recognize, that you do feel, oh, this is wood, or this is gold, or this is metal. Um, so it kind of grounds you,
Mm.
and you create a not realistic, unrealistic house or unrealistic floating ship with it. Because I have noticed if you just make it completely crazy, and you have beautiful worlds that do that, it's less interesting to me. I always like to ground it in a little bit of reality, and then kind of make it weird. I think that's always in these movies. That's when it really works, for me at least.
Yeah, it reminds me of sort of Gulliver's Travels or Jules Vernon bits, with like
Right, right, right.
the balloons, and also what really impressed me was like you get these giant birds with the patchwork sort of, like parrots or whatever they are.
Uh-huh.
That those look really good. And one of the another thing I've noticed in your work a lot, but fantastic. But the light, the gold, the way it shines in the sunlight, um, things really sparkle on the gold in your worlds, don't they?
Yeah, I
But
mean that's
that's
not there's not too much magic going on there. I think that's just
right.
kind of playing with materials, and
They look very
I
effective when as you come up to them and they're shining. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, and that's the great thing about like interactive worlds and VR, is that you can't really control that, because the
yeah.
viewer is going to stand where he's going to stand, so the reflections are going to be different every time. Um, but I think that's the fun of playing with these kind of materials, that like PBR materials that are, not super realistic, but realistic enough to communicate that, oh, this is a metal, or this is a water surface, or obviously you can't have real reflections, of course, VR, that's way too expensive. But then you just kind of have to get creative, and figure out ways to kind of mask that a little bit, and still give that sense of just communicating what the material is, without necessarily having to go realistic. Because that's just also one of the things I learned in architectural design. You would think that the architects, or the people that give you those jobs, would want realism, that they would want you to show the houses exactly that the way they will be when they're built. But the truth is, nobody wants realism, because nobody really looks at the real world objectively. I would make houses with windows in daytime, and if you look at a house in the daytime and the windows, they'll be black, because outside light is there's so much light outside that there's no light inside, so the window is just going to be black. And that's not the look they want. They want some nice reflection. They want you to turn on all the lights, so you can see some of the interior. So immediately you're starting to kind of manipulate the truth. If they have some metal things on the outside of the house on a summer day, and the reflection is in a certain way, it's going to be white. If the reflection is in the other way, it's going to be super dark. But they want the material to look the way it looks when they have the little sample in front of them in their office. So already there I learned, like, it's not about realism, it's about communicating what something is, and giving them the feeling of that it's a cohesive universe, that it fits together. And I think that's a lot of that I do apply to these worlds, where it's not necessarily realism you want, um, and things don't have the same function in the digital world. So for example, a chair, you could say, why ever use a chair in VR? Because you can't really sit on a chair, unless, I mean, you're already sitting, and maybe you could teleport to like in VR chat, on a chair, and then you're sitting there. But the use case of a chair in VR is much more about like scale. If you have a crazy otherworldly scene, and there's no reference for scale, you maybe not have an idea of like how big or small something is. Put a couple of chairs in there, and you immediately have the sense of, oh, this is how tall I am. This is how big this view is. Or you put some chairs just to give a sense of like this is a hangout spot. People come here, even though they won't use those chairs. So yeah, I mean that's the stuff that I'm really inspired by, like how things have how you give practical uses to things like, as you just mentioned, like gold materials and or objects, and use them, and then see what they do, what effect they have, and how they fit in that world.
The lighting's very cool in Maranga. There's a lot of blue light in there, isn't it? All the shadows are blue, and it looks a bit misty, and
Yeah, I
it
really like.
really.
There's this
Mm,
like teal blue color that I really
mm,
love, and I can put it in the mist and put it in the kind of skylighting, because then the blue, and I make the sunlight a little bit yellow, so you
mm,
always have that. I always love that contrast. And one of the cool things in Maranga, because I was close to finishing it, but there were definitely some things that I needed a developer for, and I got connected to Daniel Beauchamp, who is a really good developer. He works with the XR. He leads the XR department for Shopify, so he really does a lot of cool stuff. And he helped me because he really loved Maranga. He was like, I'm going to help you write some code for this. So one of the things that I had, in Maranga, you have these big circular clouds. This doesn't work in VR chat, by the way. This is the original Maranga version. These big circular clouds, they kind of function as clouds that cast shadow on the floor, are on the ground. So as you're moving to Maranga, you'll see these things scale up and down, and you'll kind of see these shadows move in the same way that you sometimes see shadows move across the landscape. It's an effect that I really enjoy. But he realized that I was using a particle system for that. So he was like, every new person is going to have a different seed, or like a different starting point for that particle system. So they're not going to be experiencing the shadows at the same time. So if you're walking with three people, big shadows coming over, it really gives you a certain feeling. And he's like, I want this to be networked. I want people to experience that at the same time. So he was, and then like a couple of days later, he's like, I figured it out. And he figured out how to connect like the seed, the starting point of that particle system, to the time on your computer, which for most people through internet is synced with world time. So that's the one consistent thing that all these computers have. So he turned that into kind of the random seed for the particle system. So it doesn't matter when you hop on or when you hop off, those clouds are then networked, and you experience the same thing at the same time. I mean, that's just like one small anecdote of like the beauty that a developer can bring in thinking creatively about these problems, and then really adding to the experience. I haven't had the time to look into how I would do that for VR chat, because I think then I'd have to get some kind of different, some Udon developer to build that for me. Um, but yeah, that's really the cool stuff that you kind of figure out and explore as you're building these worlds.
yeah, that's quite impressive. Somebody's done that. Very interesting. Because
Yeah,
you're
the guy's
right.
he's
When
brilliant.
clouds come over the landscape, it's quite an arresting thing sometimes with shadows, isn't it? If everyone can see them.
Yeah.
And do you? So when you were building Moringa, like, how do you know when to stop? Because did the PC slow down so much that you thought that's it,
Yeah. That's a
or
really good question, because
yeah,
it was this ever ongoing project where also my girlfriend was like, it's beautiful. It's already great. You should share this with people. And you're like, it's never done. I need to do this. I need to do that. But then luckily the Raindance immersive people came and asked like, would you want to submit this world? Which meant that at that point I had a deadline, which was great. So that was the deadline where it was like, all right, I can really only focus on the optimization part and making sure like my frame rate is good. And then there's still parts in Maranga where there are some colliders would be missing, and if you really try, you can easily fall off the map. I don't care that much about that. I really don't think that's so super important. The optimization was more important, so making sure it's performant, and then you have a deadline, and that's great. So then that was the version, where it was like, all right, this is done. Let me now, move on to other things.
yeah. It's I'm quite intrigued about what is going to happen next with the next world or what. You know, how
Yeah,
big is it going to be? As big as Moranga, do you think? Like,
it's it's fairly big. It might be as big. I'm going a bit more. It's still now a daytime scene. I was trying to do a nighttime scene, um, but I haven't completely figured out how to do that, because if I want to do it at the level I want to do it, I'm going to end up with these huge light maps. So I've decided to switch back to like a daytime scene. What I'm doing now is it's still fairly stylized, but I think the nature and the real environment I have in there is better, a little bit more realistic and a little bit more grounded. So I think for this new world, that contrast between what I just described, the surreal, like Durk stuff, is a bit more in contrast now with a more realistic environment. And one of the things, for example, that I'm figuring out now, I did figure out this earlier, but I didn't really do it in Maranga, is, for example, I would start off building a landscape, and I would already think about, like, this is going to be a hill, which means that this is going to be the pathway, and that means that here's going to be the water. What I've started doing now is using third-party software, something called a world creator, where you can create these realistic terrains. And you have all these parameters like water erosion, wind erosion, and you don't think about where you're going to place anything. You don't
right,
think about the roads. You don't think about, you're just making the landscape. And then you have a landscape and you're happy with it. And then you literally, and this is a lot of fun, then you literally load it into Unity and you just start walking. And then
right,
very quickly you figure out, like, oh, this is the path of least resistance to the top. And usually you're following some kind of old river bedding, or something where water eroded the cliff. And then you let that lead you in terms of where the path is going to be. And that's now I've got these happy accidents where a path might go really wiggly, but it feels completely natural. It doesn't feel forced. And then because of that, you'll have these moments where you come around the corner and suddenly this whole vista opens up for you, or you see this. There's this one spot where suddenly you can see this building in the distance, and now you're triggered, like, oh, how do I get there? Oh, maybe it's this path. And so that exploration and that kind of happy accident thing is really much more maximized. So I think those are the things that you don't really get to play around with in other media that much. I think. So that's one of the things that I think is really going to be very different for this thing. Where, as I said, I'm setting up the nature rules first and just kind of seeing where they lead me, and then not forcing the buildings where I want them, but seeing where does this landscape, how does this world want to be. I also make music, and it's the same with songs. Like, if you're writing a good song or you're really happy with it, it's really feels like the song is telling you where it wants to go. You're not
yeah.
implementing your idea, you have the starting point, and then it kind of unfolds, and then you kind of try to get out of the way and have it kind of be what it wants to be. And I think for every like artistic thing, that's the best thing you can have, where it's almost doesn't really feel like you're making the thing, but it just starts, just kind of grows and blossoms. And
So you did the music for the sound for all your projects, like you do that as well, do you? Or
yeah, I think I think that all the music for maybe that very first world, I think on the radio something is playing that might be I don't think I made that. I think that was a little sample. But all the audio design for Maranga, and there might be like a nature ambience track or something that I did use a sample for. But yeah, if I can, I'll always do my own sound and music. And this is also something that I'm doing now for this new world, where one of the things that I'm really interested in is kind of spatial audio mixing. So I'll give you a little example. This new world, you're walking into a forest and you have these big statues standing side to side at the opening. And they have these big open mouths. They're completely static, but you hear this kind of Tibetan choir that they're singing. And if you're standing in the middle of them, it's quite impressive. In a D minor. And then you walk a little further and you'll see a little guy kind of playing a flute, kind of a minimalistic repeating loop, which blends very nicely because it's in the same key
Mm.
as that D minor. So, but your position to these characters, obviously, or these sound sources, obviously determine like how loud something is in the mix. So as you kind of go into the landscape, you're a little bit doing this live mix of this soundscape at the same time, where you're encountering new things, and then they add a layer of music. You're far enough, they die out. Um, I mean, I don't know. I have 2 months to. I have given myself 2 months to kind of build this new world. But those are the things that I'm really looking forward to kind of
Wow,
getting deep.
2 months. Two
Yeah,
months. Wow, that's quite short, isn't it?
yeah. It's also because I actually yesterday I had another meeting with the rain dance people, and I really wanted me to submit a new world. So
Right.
I think this is going to be it. And I said like 2 months is good. I'm pretty, I'll probably keep working on it after that, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to keep it, put it in a place where it's already going to be a cool experience. And I said it's good for me to give myself like a deadline like that,
Sure.
so I won't like overshoot and keep it manageable. And yeah, just pick out the good ideas and do them, and not get lost in too much other stuff.
Do you do any programming in Unity with it, or is it mainly you because there's enough to do anyway, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a
Yeah.
programmer, but for a lot of
Yeah.
times I thought, should I learn programming? I've done some like visual programming, mainly in Unreal, actually, like the blueprint stuff, like really simple stuff, like just triggering an audio or opening a door. And every now and then I got a little bit further, did a little bit more interesting stuff. But no, for that, I've already decided
You've
that's
got
not my
enough to
lane.
you've got enough
Yeah.
to do with it. I mean, I like that audio kit thing in VR chat. I've been playing around with that a bit, that responds to music and color and sound. Uh, plug
Oh,
in in unit.
I
Yeah.
haven't, but that's like a prefab, a VR chat,
Yeah,
like a
it's just
VR
a
chat thing.
prefab, a free one, and you can trigger, you could trigger anything to sound. I thought it'd be quite complicated, but I looked at the examples and it's quite easy to work out. It's quite interesting. Yeah, it would trigger sound, you could trigger anything to the beats and the music. And
But that's cool. I might have
yeah.
to check that out.
Yeah, audio kit. And do you think you might ever build a world for I mean you can't squeeze have you got any interest in squeezing your worlds down for like a Quest 2 or something? Or I mean that would be impossible for Moranger because it's like almost it's
Yeah,
almost
I
like a
got a lot of
terabyte, isn't it? Yeah.
a lot of people ask me that,
Mm,
because I do know that there's a big crowd that would love to see that,
yeah.
and I've tried, but for me, I would have to do it in a completely different way to still keep it optimized. And for now, I like all the visual fidelity I have just building for desktop. So I'm gonna keep doing that for now. It all depends. If I have a really good idea for like a small space that's completely light baked and it doesn't require any of those things, like real-time shadows or anything that's too costly. If I have a good idea, I might do it. But for now, I'm just having too much fun, having like big textures, big models, and not, you still worry about optimization, but not to the degree you have to in Quest, because in Quest you'll have to like go to the point where you're even giving up your normal maps, and then if I can figure out a way where I'm like, oh, I have this specific non-realistic visual style that I think is really cool, it could really work well on a Quest, then that might motivate me or spark me to do something there. And I've done some worlds in browser. So I've made one world on spatial IO. I
Oh,
did
cool. I haven't come across that yet. I'll have to have a look. Yeah.
I'll send it. I do a terrible job of promoting that stuff. I'll send a link. But it's basically a museum with some local Curacao artists that I gave some space there. And it was a good exercise and a lot of fun to kind of figure out how to do that, keep it optimized, and because it's so accessible, it's fun because people don't have to download anything, and for
Sure.
certain use cases, it's great. But uh, it is always like, you do have to you do pay for it in terms of like what you can get away with in
Yeah.
terms of aesthetics and visual stuff. So
It's quite a challenge getting everything down to 100 megabyte, the Quest 2 on VR chat. You see, some worlds are like 99.9
yeah,
megabytes,
yeah, and
and they
they've been
just
working really hard and just and scale this down, scale that down, and
maybe your tent one with the lovely cushions in it, you might be able to do. What was that one called? The
yeah, the shelter in place might
shelter in
yeah,
place. That's
that's a
right.
good point actually. If
Yeah.
I think I'd have to like I think the lights are baked. If I just bake all the shadows, um, it might work. But that was also one of those worlds where it's really small and people love it, but they also always say, "But I wish it was bigger." Uh, I built it like in 2 or 3 weeks during Corona, and because all of a sudden all my other work stopped, and I was like, "All right, what should I do?" And I always had this idea like, could I make something that feels like a triple A game visual quality, but for VR chat? And then I was like, all right, let me just really limit myself in a really small space and kind of squeeze everything out of it. And then I did that, and then always it's like I'm kind of done and on to the next thing. So I
Yeah,
art,
I love the colors and the cushions in that, and that I think that's they almost look a bit Moroccan or something,
yeah,
or a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
really nice feeling to the textures of the cushions, and nice chill out space, So
Yeah, there was also, that's also why it's called shelter in place, because obviously
yeah,
everybody then at that point had to stay home. And I had some people also commenting, like, yeah, that we did, it was a kind of a hangout spot for some of us where we would kind of go there and, um, you know,
the
chill
shape
out
of the
and just,
teapots as well and
oh,
things,
yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
very very distinctive. So yeah, well,
Yeah.
I really look forward to seeing what's going to come next.
Mhm.
I'm really grateful you've been able to talk to us today, and we can find out what you've been doing. But also I forgot to say that guitar player that you did in one of your worlds that's standing up that looks like it's been exploded. He's holding a guitar. I think it's in one of
Oh,
your
yeah, yeah,
smaller
yeah, yeah,
worlds.
yeah,
That looks
yeah.
great. That I thought,
Yeah,
wow.
that was really one of those things that you can really do easily with VR modeling, because it's just to do that in 3ds Max is really hard.
Right. Okay.
Like, so, because you just have a bunch of elements, and same with the patchwork, just kind of in 3D sticking stuff and duplicating something, and constantly rotating and scaling. That's kind of how you build something like that. That's if I'd have to make that in 3ds Max, I really have no idea
mm,
how I would do it. So I really like that. It's a good point. I really love those kind of shapes. Really didn't really happen for me until I started doing the VR modeling. Um,
I'm gonna I'm gonna have to get Gravity Sketch out. I think after we finish this conversation, go into the other room and start trying it. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
really. I mean, you have to get past the point that you don't think about the tools so much, and you're
Right.
just kind of building. But yeah, I think it's still. I really don't understand there are not more of these low poly modeling tools. I see all these other sculpting tools and kind of voxel tools. Like I've been playing with Adobe Substance Modeler, which is great for other use cases as well. And I've been playing around with that. But
There is Shapes XR as well, which I've been playing about with a bit. Shapes XR, which is another interesting one.
does it do poly? Do you know? Does it do poly modeling?
It's got a lot of tools in there that will remind me of Gravity Sketch. Have a look at it and
Right.
see what you think. Shapes XR,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's a free one, so
I do remember it.
yeah. I thought the tools
Maybe
were
I
quite
should
good
check
in
it
it.
out.
You
I should
might
check it
want
out.
to go down the rabbit hole with that one. Well, look, I'm going to let you go now because I know you need to get on with your worlds. But I'm really grateful. Thank you for talking to us today. It's been brilliant, and I'll send the links down to everybody as the world so they can have a little wander around them. So,
Yeah, that's great. No problem. And I'll, as soon as my new world published, I'll put it on Twitter. And if I remember, I'll DM you when something new
oh,
comes
that
up.
would be super. That's super. Hello. All right.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, she's offering me ice cream. She thinks it's been going on long enough, so
Oh, you
we'll
lucky you. We could do some of that here when the weather heats up. Well, look, thanks for talking to me today, and
Yeah,
we look forward to seeing your world soon. I appreciate it.
great.